All right, so we're a wholly owned subsidiary of OAI, which is affiliated with Parallax, and that's as of January 1st. And we're presenting this in partnership with the Aerozone Alliance. We're pleased to bring you this information to help spark your innovation. And we want to get a sense of who's in the room. So if you're from a college or a university, would you just raise your hand? Okay. And how about from a business? Okay, great, about the same amount. Anyone know specifically that they're in the Aerozone business? We have one, all right. And then the government and nonprofits? Okay, great. And the Great Lakes Biomimicry Board. All right, thank you for coming. So it's always important, I think, to start with a why. Why would we bring this information to you? Why do we want to talk about this? Because we all know that we need to think and do differently. And we cannot just innovate our way out of this problem. We've got to have innovation with sustainability at its core. That's why we have the two speakers with us here today. So I want to introduce John Nottingham is the CEO of Nottingham Spirk, a world-class digital Internet of Things enabled product innovation firm. The company has co-created over 1,400 patents, and of which 95% have been commercialized. That's an astonishing number. The Nottingham Spirk vertical innovation process has helped client partner companies earn over $50 billion in combined sales. John and his team have co-created award-winning innovation such as the Spin Brush, the largest selling powered toothbrush line, Club Car Tempo Walk, the world's first autonomous golf caddy, the Medtronic's Cardio Insight EC View, the first non-invasive electrocardiograph mapping system. He's going to talk more about these later. Currently, John's team and partners are developing floating wind turbines to be deployed in the Great Lakes to provide green energy throughout the Midwest. And our first speaker is Brent Duersch, serving as EY's Managing Director for the EY Nottingham Spirk Innovation Hub in Cleveland, Ohio, where he focuses on crafting inspirational experiences and helping clients bring billion-dollar concepts to market. Prior to joining EY, Brent spent 20 years at Procter & Gamble in Cincinnati in a wide variety of innovation roles, standing up and running adjacent and disruptive innovation teams, working on new products, packaging, digital capabilities, service experiences, and business models. Following that, Brent spent several years in Walmart in Bentonville, Arkansas, running their enterprise digital transformation program and managing their startup innovation lab. And with that, Brent, would you please come up?
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. How are we all doing this afternoon? All right. I'm going to give a little bit of context about start with a little bit of context on the Innovation Hub, right? And I do this not because I want it to be a commercial, right? But I think it actually sets a lot of context around how John and I work together on it's an almost daily basis now. So I'm going to give a little bit of background context on that, and then we'll dive into the discussion a little bit. So I love this example. John gave me this example, right? It's like, think about the Innovation Hub, the Innovation Center we've created as a beehive, right? It's definitely like a buzz with something every day. It's kind of a function of what, right? But what we've created is a really vertically integrated facility around innovation, and we'll unpack that. We'll talk a little bit about what that means. But part of it is it's organized in a way a very deliberate way to efficiently, effectively produce results. So you'll get a sense of how that works. So EY and Nottingham Spirk may be like two very unlikely companies in some ways to partner. EY, people are like, who's EY? It's Ernst and Young, right? Founded in Cleveland in 1903. Not a lot of people know that necessarily, right? But our roots are here in the Northeast Ohio area. 400,000 consultants worldwide working on, people know us for tax, they know us for audit, but we do manufacturing consulting, supply chain, sustainability consulting, tech consulting, a pretty broad array. Nottingham Spirk, based here in Cleveland, has been here for 50 years. And has this phenomenal track record around bringing new products to market and the commercialization side of it in particular, right? So, 1,400 patents and 95% commercialization rate kind of speaks for itself. But what's interesting is, where did we really connect? And part of that goes back to 2017. EY has a Global Entrepreneur of the Year program. Nottingham Spirk was one of the nominees for that. So we have startup companies, family-owned businesses from all over the world competing for top honors. And they were nominated and they won. And it started this discussion of, wow, you're in Cleveland. We were, founded in Cleveland. What could we do that's interesting from a collaboration standpoint? And the hub that we've stood up here really over the past 5 years really represents a fair amount of what we can do in partnership with each other. So the Innovation Center, this is really close to Case's campus. It's up on University Circle. But what you've got under one roof is kind of all the capabilities you would need to bring new products to market, both physical products and digital products. So on one side, you've got everything from market research to industrial design, different disciplines of engineering, a fabrication shop, right? We build real things here. It's exciting. On the other side, you've got a EY bringing a lot of the digital capabilities to the table. So digital manufacturing, supply chain tools for digital customer engagement, right? So we find that we can partner in some very creative ways where the physical and the digital worlds converge, which is something that we find a lot of companies are kind of dealing with is that convergence today. We focus kind of on, let's say, the highest level on two big things. One is companies are trying to bring new products to market quickly, at scale, and preferably in a sustainable way. You're really helping them get kind of unstuck on their innovation journeys. We find that companies can get kind of mired down in a quicksand of innovation for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes it's, we got a really great idea, but we don't know how to build it, but we think customers would love it. Sometimes it's, we got a really great prototype and we don't know how to manufacture it at scale, right? So we'll spend time working with the different companies to help them really get unstuck on their innovation journeys, making new products, new services, new business models around it. The other side is maybe a little more on the digital transformation side. So some companies are coming to us saying, hey, help us optimize our operations, help us drive quality, efficiency, throughput. So that's where we'll get more involved, maybe on the manufacturing and supply chain side. Then the last piece, really, we've kind of set up the hub to be a place for ecosystem collaboration. And we do that with a variety of different tech partners, value chain partners, and capitalization funding partners. The reason people were like, oh, why is government funding in yellow? One of the things I really like to hit on when we're talking about the topic of sustainability is, if you are embarking on initiatives to create more environmentally friendly products, redesign manufacturing operations to have less environmental impact, look at supply chain operations and redesign them for less environmental impact. There's government funding, tax credits that can be tapped into, right? So, little public service announcement there for that. But just wanted to kind of cue that up as a little bit of background, right? So like I said, John and I work together on an almost daily basis with different companies who are in this market of, or kind of in the space of trying to create new products, new packages, new digital capabilities to bring to market. So that would give a little context on our partnership. So changing gears, now let's talk the topic at hand: sustainability, innovation, biomimicry. Raise your hand if you work for a company, a corporation, and you're feeling pressure to do something different on the sustainability front. No more? There, guys, there better be more people than that. Okay. Well, one of the things we find when we're working with different clients is they're feeling the pressure to change the way they operate, to change their product mix, to change their operations based on a variety of sustainability pressures, right? And that's everything from climate change to work, looking at natural resources, how they're being depleted, thinking about the waste that's being generated by their operations and looking for ways to reduce that. Looking at their manufacturing and supply chain operations and really trying to find ways to take pollution out of the chain. And beyond that, beyond even just the environmental side of it, there's this social sustainability angle, right? Which is thinking about what's the impact we're having on different local markets, global markets, right? The impact on the people, not just the impact on the environment, right? So part of sustainability, it's really easy to get very hung up on it's all about the environmental side, right? But there's this massive social side as well. And the manufacturers that we're dealing with are, kind of raising their hands, being like, help us think differently about it. And, the reality of it is innovation, we'll unpack, we'll have a little bit of innovation myth busters today, right? As we go through today's discussion. But innovation is really a critical capability. It's a critical skill set to be able to solve a lot of the sustainability problems we're dealing with, right? So it's whether that's using innovation as a catalyst to create new products and services that are more environmentally and socially friendly, whether that's taking existing products and looking at them with the lens of, wow, how could I re-engineer this? Could I value engineer this in a way that has less environmental impact, more positive social impact, like working with an existing product portfolio? It could be creating entirely new businesses around environment, different sustainability opportunities, right? And ultimately, taking what we're capable of from an innovation standpoint and using it to solve some of the bigger challenges that the world is facing today from an just to kind of improve the viability of our planet long term. This is, a lot of the challenges around sustainability require big thinking, right? And and really part of innovation is, successful innovation is thinking about how we apply some of these innovation mindsets and tool sets in order to really tap into that. So Mythbusters, this is good. What's interesting is if you look at John and I, we've taken very different career routes to end up in a place where we're working together, right? John's from the world of entrepreneurism, right? Started up his own business in a garage right here in Cleveland. I took the, let's call it, ridiculously big corporate route, right? Spent 20 some years between one of the world's largest consumer products companies and arguably the world's largest retailer, depending on how you count. Despite the fact that we come from very different backgrounds, there's actually some very common things we've seen over the years as we work with different companies on their innovation. So we'll have a bit of Mythbusters here around those topics. So one, there's this idea that floats around out there sometimes that's structure, process kills innovation. And I think it's because people kind of look at, innovation is this creative process. It's like, I need to come up with all these ideas. I put all these ideas up on the wall. I fill the walls with ideas, and then something magic happens, right? That's just the start of the process, right? In reality, innovation requires a lot of discipline because that ideation part, that's really just the start of the process. Being able to take those ideas, right, go out and do some discovery work, go assess the landscape, understand what's going on in the world, what's going on in the industry, doing conceptual design, making those ideas real, doing prototypes to demonstrate feasibility, figuring out how to scale up, right? And finally getting to the point where you deploy something or launch into the market. Like that's a lot of work. That takes a lot of discipline. And there's a lot of parts of aspects of innovation that require a similar degree of discipline, right? Selecting what ideas to work on, having really good criteria about, is this going to move the needle from a business standpoint? Is this technically feasible? Knowing when it's time to kill something that's not working in your innovation pipeline. These are all tough things. They all require a certain degree of discipline. So the idea that, innovation, too much structure kills it, I would beg to differ, right? I think that, if you really want to get something to market, to succeed with it, you need to think about, what's the process. And this is my stereotypical innovation process. I like it because all the words begin with the letter D, right? The reality of it is, it's like, is this a perfect innovation process? No, right? But what's most important is just that you within your organizations have an innovation process, everyone agrees on it, and everyone follows it, right? And uses the same language as they talk about it. Bit of a play on words, right? At the same time, not only does innovation require discipline, it often requires multiple disciplines. And this is, this is something I found really early in my career at P&G, was the most productive innovation organizations I was part of, right? And productive is defined as getting things into market, getting things into customers' hands, right? Making money off of them, right? Actually getting products that people want to buy. The most productive ones, we had some very interesting team compositions. And what I noticed is like people were coming from different backgrounds, and there was this kind of creative tension that was happening. But it was in that creative tension and the challenging of each other that you really started to take good ideas and make good ideas better and better and better, and figure out how to drive them through a pipeline and get them to market successfully. So when I came to EY, one of my colleagues, he made a comment one day. He's like, when we put together innovation teams, we think about like the right mix of B school, D school, T school people. What's that mean, right? Right. And he's kind of explaining it to me. He's like, well, think about it. It's like any challenge you want to face, right? If you're trying to bring something to market, you want someone who can look at the business case of it, right? Where will we make the money? Will we make the money? That's my B school person, right? I need someone, the creative, who can take these out there ideas and conceptualize them and bring them to life in a real way. That's my D school person. That's my design school person, right? And then I need the engineer. I need the information technologist. I need the T school person who can prove the feasibility, who can make the thing work, right? And I was like, I love it. The B school, D school, T school model, I get it, right? But when I look back at a lot of the most successful innovation teams I've worked with over the years, they've got that mix. B school, D school, T school, all the above. Mythbuster number 2. Different types of innovation require radically different approaches. So if I'm over here working on a process innovation, I might take a different approach than if I'm making a product, if I'm making a new service. The reality of it is you can create an innovation process. You can have an innovation process that supports multiple kinds of innovation. And this is really important because it gets everyone in your organization speaking the same language. You can't have the product people over here talking about this is how we get something to market, and the packaging people over here talking about this is how we get something to market, and the process people over here and the digital people over here. We need everybody speaking the same language, and having a common process to drive multiple kinds of innovation, it's preferred, right? To be able to run it that way. Part of it, right? Again, taking it one step further, if you're trying to do something more disruptive from an innovation standpoint, the reality is you're probably going to need more than one of the above of those, right? It might be a new product with a service offering around it. Maybe it's a connected product with a digital platform behind it. Maybe the combination of that new service model and that digital platform requires some new business model, right? It's like, in order to do something really disruptive, you can't have 5 or 6 different innovation groups working on it, using their own model, using their own process, using their own language. So just something to, a couple things to kind of think about, right? But structure, discipline, not bad for innovation, right? Having a process for innovation is good. We like having a process. So we'll talk a little bit about innovation by analogy, because this really gets us into the tees us up for biomimicry. When a lot of people talk about coming up with ideas in the upfront part of the innovation process, again, it's like people kind of gravitate towards this brainstorming kind of unstructured exercise, right? I throw a bunch of people in a room, I give them a lot of Post-it notes, they come up with a bunch of ideas, cover the walls with them, right? You've heard, the rules, right? Oh, the more ideas, the better. There are no bad ideas. Okay, yeah. Been at this for a while, right? works, right? But sometimes there are some problems that are better solved with a little more structured of an ideation technique. Innovation by analogy, it's something I used to use it at P&G. It's just one structured innovation, kind of ideation technique. Like if you've ever heard of like 6 thinking hats, it's like you get everybody around the table, they all kind of put different hats on, whether physically or virtually, right? And kind of play different roles throughout the ideation process. Like that's a structured ideation process as well, right? It's encouraged to kind of push people in different ways. So the idea with innovation by analogy is this is a structured process where I can start with a problem. I'm going to reframe that problem. I'm going to, kind of get out of the weeds and up into the air, so to speak. And I'm trying to kind of generalize it, make it a little less specific. Then I start to look around while I'm up there in the air, right, at other industries, at other domains. And I start thinking about what are the problem solution pairs that are analogous that I could take inspiration from in order to solve my problem, right? I start to find some of these pairs, and then I bring them back down to my own domain and see, can I apply what I learned in another domain to my own domain, right? Seems pretty simple, right? But not, not everyone, kind of approaches ideation this way. A public service announcement before we go any further. The amount of time you spend on defining the problem will pay back significantly before you start this process, right? So there's this natural tendency, with engineers, we love to solve problems, right? And you give us a problem, and the first thing we do is go build something, go tear something apart, go solve something, right? Whereas sometimes it's better to step back and really fall in love with the problem. Understand the problem, understand the root cause, understand the scope of it, the magnitude, the impact. Fall in love with that, then go solve it, right? But really make sure that you're spending the right kind of effort on getting clear on what the problem is, because it's like you're not clear of the problem, and then you try to do innovation by analogy, it's going to work great, right? So get clear on the problem first. So an example of this, right? If you how many of you own a Dyson vacuum? Okay. So people sometimes ask, where did James Dyson get the inspiration for the vacuum, for the Dyson vacuum? And where some of it came from is it really kind of followed this innovation by analogy kind of model. James Dyson, so the story goes, was looking at kind of a traditional vacuum cleaner, right, and how it kept getting clogged up, like the bags and the filters would, kind of start to restrict airflow. And over time, right, the more you capture in the filter, the more you capture in the bag, the more the airflow gets restricted, right? So, eventually you get this law of this diminishing return on vacuum performance. And so you replace the bag, replace the filter, and you start over again. And he's like, this doesn't make sense. Like, why can't we build a better vacuum? And so what he did was he abstracted the problem, right? And said, okay, really, what you're doing in a vacuum cleaner is you're trying to remove a large quantity of small particles from moving air. That's really what's happening, right? It's not a function of making a better filter. It's not a function of making a better bag. The question is, where else in the world can I go and I can see a lot of particles being removed from the air really efficiently? And it turns out one of those domains is in sawmills. So you think about going to a sawmill, right? It's wood's getting cut, sawdust is flying everywhere, you've got particles everywhere. You need an efficient way to capture them, get them out of the air, right? So that they're not covering just absolutely everything. And what they use in sawmills, they actually have these giant cyclonic systems that capture the air starts spinning at a really, really high speed, and the particles start to fall out. And so James Dyson saw that at basically at a sawmill and said, hey, why can't I do that on a small scale for a vacuum cleaner? And about 142 prototypes later, he got it, right? So, it wasn't an easy jump, but it worked, right? And what he was able to see in these large manufacturing facilities provided that inspiration, right, for how to approach vacuum cleaners in a radically different way, right? It wasn't about making a better bag. It wasn't about making a better filter. It was about taking a completely different approach to solving the problem. So that's, kind of innovation by analogy and action. So now if we flip and we start to talk about biomimicry, right? Biomimicry is really the same process. It's the same mindset as innovation by analogy. We're just looking to nature for inspiration on how to solve that problem, right? So same process applies. I've got a problem, ideally well-defined. I'm going to abstract it, right? But when I start to look to other domains for how to solve the problem, I start looking towards nature for ideas on how to solve it, as opposed to, every domain possible, So that's really the idea here, right? That's part of why I wanted to set up the innovation by analogy concept, or that as a tool, because it's the basis in some ways for really applying biomimicry to your own efforts. So a few different examples here that you can kind of think about, right? But one is, if your part of your role was creating new materials, creating new processes, right? You could look at how butterflies are able to kind of change colors when they're exposed to different types of light, and convert that into electricity, right? With some sort of a static charge, right? It's like there's some interesting kind of ideas happening there from a nature standpoint. If you're thinking about the idea, people are like, where did the idea for Velcro come from? Right? It was inspired through a biomimicry exercise, right? Which is, if you've ever been hiking, right? You got hiking around, you're off the trail, you start picking up thistles and all those little burrs that, attach to your shoes, attach to your jeans, whatever. It's the same kind of idea, right? And it's something that can attach, but something that can detach as needed, right? And so there's some inspiration there, right? Or even if you think about it from taking existing products and how you might improve the efficiency of it, you think about something as big as the Boeing Dreamliner. Inspiration for the design of the shape of the wings was really drawn from the shape of bird wings, right, which are very efficient at generating lift, right? So just some different kind of ways of thinking about how biomimicry might play out. So with that, I'm going to bring up John. John's going to share some examples of how Nottingham Spirk has applied this in their projects over the years. Mr. Nottingham.
Thanks, Brent. And just make sure that I'm doing this properly here. Okay. So, yeah, let's talk a little bit about biomimicry in real case studies. What we can do, look at nature. Nature has spent what 3.8 billion years solving everything. If you really drill down, nature's probably solved everything if we can just figure it out. So one of the things that we do when we do a process of innovation, we say, well, how does nature do it? Well, how did nature solve that problem? Quite often when you look at that, it's one of the key features of coming up with a solution. There we go. Okay. Yeah. How does nature insulate? How does it create color? Sometimes it's not as simple as you think. When you really drill down and really can look at that. So let's find out how do you do that. These are real world studies. This is one where we worked with one of the largest companies in Cleveland. In fact, the largest coating company in the world is Sherwin-Williams. Well, for 100 years, you had a can. Well, think about this. What if, and this is, somebody asked me about this once before. What if every time you took a package of milk out of the refrigerator, you had to find a tool to open it? And every time you poured it into a glass, it dribbled down the side and all over the table. And every time you closed it, you'd have to have a hammer to close it. Would you think that was a good package? Well, that's the package for 100 years that we've accepted for paint. Why? Why can't you look at nature? How does nature do something that pours? Well, All right, let's take a look. You can look at flowers and how they accept rain and then efficiently pour it down, and you can develop a spout that doesn't drip. Think about that. Those are the kind of things. What we did with that is we took the DIY segment of Sherwin-Williams, which is, by the way, the smaller segment. You know, the guy that's up, you know, that's or the person that's going in to paint your house doesn't care about, he's got a tool, you know, he's got a hammer, he doesn't care. But a do-it-yourselfer does. The do-it-yourselfer is not going to accept a dumb product. And that's where we play. Matter of fact, we won one of the 10 best packages, not of the year, of the decade for that. So this is how you can apply biomimicry to solving problems. How do you use nature to do multidirectionality? When we developed the spin brush toothbrush, we were looking at how do you remove plaque? How does nature do things in different directions? Rather than just brush your teeth one way or the other, if you can have a mechanical action where one goes this way, one goes this way, it's a much more efficient way of removing plaque. And nature does that. How do you collect and attract? Well, you take a look at nature and how it uses static to attract dust and so forth. That's how we did it with the Swiffer Sweep It Back. And one of the largest selling vacuum cleaner companies. Here's another one. We had a formula that you had to keep separate until you used it, much like vinegar and oil, right? So it had to keep separate. We had to ship it separate, but when we delivered it, it had to be mixed. Now, the package before this, they shipped this formula with one pump bottle and another pump bottle. You had to take them both out, get a dose cup, pump here, pump there, and then have it mixed. Well, how does nature do it? Nature does it the same way. It can keep the two formulas mixed and then form it together. So we created a way to dispense the two liquids simultaneously together so that it could mix by itself in a cap, dose cap, and then it's usable and has a maximum functionality. Well, how do you carry water? How do you carry a large weight? Right after the Haiti crisis, we were looking at populations that had to carry water, and you've seen them. They carry on their head or they carry it in gas cans. Well, what we did is we took a look, and the most efficient way of carrying weight is how the monkeys do it. A parent will carry the baby on their back. Well, we did an efficient water backpack, much more efficient way to do it than on your head or a gas can. How does nature layer? Let's take a look at how, just take a look at how nature does it. And we created paneling paper. It's a much more efficient way to do baking. How do you open and close valves? We did a beer dispensing product for draft beer in your refrigerator, but we had to create a dispenser. It's very easy to do a dispenser for $100. Very hard to do it for $5. So we had to look at nature to think how do you open and close valves? We look at how a heart does it, and we use that for inspiration. On doing a modular lawn and garden product, how do you connect them very efficiently? you look at nature to see how nature connects and disconnects. And we created a very interesting patented system on connecting a motor that you could connect a lawnmower, leaf blower, snow blower with one snap, because the consumer doesn't want to get out a socket wrench. And created the flex system. And we talked about this. How do you do a flexible wearable? So this is the technology that was tech transfer from Case Western Reserve. What they did is they came up with an idea of putting 252 EKG sensors on a vest. And it would actually take the place of invasive catheterization for cardiologists. But different bodies are different shapes. How do you do a product that you use printed electronics, but how do you fit a body? Well, you look at how does the brain work? You look at how nature does English ivy. How does English ivy cover a wall, so to speak? Well, using some of those inspirations, just like Brent said, designed by analogy, we created this one-use vest using printed electronics and flexible connections so that could fit different body shapes. So you can see how you use nature to inspire. These were the early prototypes. This was the prototype, again, text transfer. We work with a lot of colleges and universities. Every one of them has a tech transfer department, right? Right, Brent? They have hundreds of ideas that they want to transfer. The problem is you have to take those and you have to take it through the system, the same one that Brent talked about, from ideation all the way to commercialization. This is what we found when we started, but by using biomimetic principles and getting it down to something that was efficient, easy to make, very inexpensive to make, that's how we solved the problem. And those are my solutions. Brent, you want to come up here? We can answer some questions. How are we doing time-wise? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your questions, everybody. Here's your chance.
Mike, so the audience, virtual audience can hear them. So they're on. And great. So we'll take some questions both from the audience virtually and
Tell them to put it in the chat.
oh yeah, put it in the chat.
Sure.
And I will just sort of watch the room.
Yes, John, a great presentation. Quick question. How do you work with industry? So folks that are here that are interested in tapping into that wealth of knowledge and insights, how do businesses work with you all?
Well, we're the beehive, right? All you have to do is bring the bees to the hive. And really, we exist to both with our connection with EY and our individual connections. We exist to help companies, not as much on their core, but adjacencies and disruptive ideas, utilizing the biomimetic principles and other things. It all starts with a phone call. It all starts with, hey, this is our problem. This is our opportunity. How can we work together? Other questions? Yes, sir.
How do you handle the IP issue with universities? Recently got into a discussion with a local company on that.
Yeah, so that's a great question because we spent quite a bit of time with Case Western Reserve with that very subject and others. We work with we work with Cornell and some others. That is, I think that the arrangement we have with Case Western could be a model for other universities because it works very well. For instance, this Medtronic vest that we did was transferred from Case Western Reserve. Case Western Reserve transfers the technology, and we encourage them for the income from that gets shared from the inventor as well as the institution. So that's a key to the whole thing. Does that make sense? Yes.
John, great presentation.
You-
How do you?
Oh, Dave, I'm sorry, I'm here. Can you speak up for the people on?
Sure.
So that we catch your
Hi,
question?
John. This is great. How do you effectively translate academic speak to industry speak and vice versa when you put together these collaborations?
You know, I love that question. And this is one that we use an analogy. We use an analogy of this is where the university is. This is tech transfer. But everybody wants to get over here to commercialization. And between tech transfer and commercialization is what we call quicksand in the middle. How do you get that quicksand? Some people call it the valley of death, right? Right, Brian? And that's that translation. So unfortunately, the corporate, the Medtronics of the world aren't going to go over here and say, oh, I love it. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to develop it. It has to be enhanced. You have to, what we do, this is what we do, and it's been very effective. You take the tech transfer. We have a process we call vertical innovation, vertically integrated innovation, using some of the same techniques that Brent and I talked about. We put it in a vehicle, we typically privately funded, and go through the quicksand ourselves to what we call a soft launch, where it's commercialized in a region, commercialized with one retailer, commercialized with the government, commercialized some soft launch. We prove that it's real, prove that it's commercial. Then we can build a pro forma that shows industry, hey, this is how you make money. Then they jump on it. That's how we got Medtronic to jump on the vest. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Carol, have you got a question?
Yeah, so was a comment saying that, thinking about positive deviance studies being similar to biomimicry, and it feels like the bi analogy is a similar idea. Define the problem, find the instance of the solved problem, and determine how. She also said the examples you gave were lovely. I have another question. Do we need a biologist on our team to come up with ideas like the ones you presented?
Do you want to take it or want me to take it?
But I'll jump in here. Yeah, I mean, the answer is not necessarily, but it doesn't hurt, right? And if I think of, again, like thinking about the structure of really successful innovation teams, I'm a big fan of the T-shaped people. Have you ever heard this? This is different than the other T,
Okay.
right? This isn't the T-school people. This is the T-shaped people, right? But this is as I build an innovation team, I'm thinking about, I want a person that's really deep in one or two things and very broad in a lot of different things, right? And that's a case where it's like, depending on the volume of innovations I'm trying to drive, depending on the nature of the projects, yeah, I might not need a dedicated biologist on my team to do it, but I would want a couple people with biology skills, physiology skills out in the T part, right? Out in the breadth part, who could look at things. And I might get that based on, I could be hiring from college, like based on certain degrees. I could be pulling people from one industry in to work on a problem in another industry. There's different ways that you could approach it, but wouldn't have to be full-time, but could figure it out.
I mean, I loved what Brent said about innovation being structured. And part of the structure of what we call vertical innovation is, especially early on, we'll bring subject matter experts. I mean, we are on a college campus. I mean, we can pick up the phone and just have somebody come in for an ideation session, a biologist for an ideation session, especially if we're doing something that has that as a critical path. And as we go along, we may call upon that resource all the way through. So, we'll cast a wide net, at least early on.
When you talk about the private funding for the quicksand mode of the research, would that private funding be considered a loan, or do you take ownership of the project, or how does that look? And do you ever apply for or consider any foundation money or grant money to help fund new ideas that come in?
Yeah, so we give an analogy. We give an analogy in our talks about an SUV, an innovation SUV going through the quicksand. And we talk about the funding being the fuel for the SUV. When we start, we'd like to have enough fuel or access to enough fuel to get all the way over to commercialization. Because if you go through the quicksand and you lose your funding, it sinks. So the answer to that is multiple. This vehicle could be an independent LLC where the technology and the IP goes into the LLC. We'll add IP in there. It's quite often funded by a group of investors, family offices, high net worth individuals, and so forth, but could be also from foundations and other non-diluted funding like government, right? We just have to have enough fuel in the tank to get over there. And there's multiple ways to do that.
Thank you.
It's
So I was just curious if in some of the design, do you find or have you found that the item you've designed actually inadvertently affects the company that you're designing for in terms of how that organization functions?
yes.
So do you get involved in that process or do you pull any biomimicry? Is there anything to pull in how they are looking at how they're functioning together?
Yes, and that's what we do all the time, right, Brent? I mean, companies that we work with typically are really good at their core. I mean, these are their core products and services, and they incrementally develop them, and that's what they do, and they have to do that. What they quite often need help on or just want that inspiration is while they're doing their core, there's really three areas of innovation that are important. There's core, there's adjacent that looks like your core, but it's a different market or it's a different something. It looks like the core, but it's not your core. The third is breakthrough or disruptive. Best practice is if you have an innovation budget, you spend 70% on core, 20% on adjacent, and the other 10% on disruptive. Why? Because your IRR, your return on investment is 10% on core, incremental, 20% on adjacent, and 70% on breakthrough. How does that affect the company? Big time, it affects the company. That's how it's done. Do you want to add to that?
Well, it's what we see sometimes as well is there's a function of some companies have more of a function of we need help just getting this product to market, right? And then sometimes there's we know our innovation system is anywhere between mildly broken and completely dysfunctional. It just depends on, kind of where they are. And that's where it's like there are some things that can be done from as well to help from like kind of like a process and a culture and a structure standpoint to help the core organization as well, just in terms of overall innovation effectiveness. Like sometimes like we'll talk with companies and they'll talk about like, oh, we don't really have like our pipeline is very immature. We don't have a lot of good ideas, or, oh, we don't really have an innovation process, or better yet, we have an innovation process. We just don't follow it. Right. So it's like there are some areas where, we'll work with them on kind of we can help you fix your innovation a little bit. Right. Or if we are all in the SUV together, working on a project together, sometimes some of the things I would say like kind of like wear off, right, from one party to the other. But you see another organization run innovation for a while, you start to steal ideas and borrow ideas from them.
Yeah, we'll have a company come into our hub for a day. They'll come in, a whole group of them will come in. Sometimes they'll take the corporate plane and land at Burke Lakefront and come up to our place and spend a day. And the way I'll describe it is the look on their face when they walk out at the end of the session is the look that I had in my kids' faces when they came from summer camp. It was a breath of fresh air. It was a way to look at their business differently. It was a way to get away from the internal environment and think about innovation for a day and really get their arms around a structured way to make it happen. Don't you agree?
We have an online question.
Yes.
Yeah, hi, okay. Can you comment on the use of bio-inspired materials that can be manufactured in a sustainable manner? Have you guys done any work in that yet?
So I'm going to go in one direction on this. You can go in a different direction.
Okay.
Our focus maybe is less on the R side and more on the D side.
Yeah.
And I say that in a sense, like we don't do a lot of material science work, right? And that stems from the fact that it takes a certain skill set, right? A certain set of capabilities to be able to do that. And it's hard to come up with a commercially successful innovation center that does more R and can't do the D side, the development side. So we tend to over-index on the development side of the process. So we work with companies that will bring us very new innovative materials, and we will try to find interesting applications for those. Occasionally, when we're working on projects, we'll find a need for, we actually need a new material with this certain set of properties, and we'll go out and kind of work our network to find someone who can create the materials that we need for kind of like whatever the requirements or the specifications are. But we're not really creating the materials typically ourselves.
On the other hand,
It's the other way.
on the other hand, we'll find companies like Procter and Gamble, like Unilever, that go on their website and say, we're going to be 100% recyclable by 2030. Now, behind the scenes, some of them say, how the heck are we going to get here? Right? There is a way to get there, but you have to do that structured in an innovation way to do it. And we're actually doing some things on how to get them there. But the goal is nice. The sustainability goals are nice. It should be there. But having that goal takes a way to get there. Yes.
Kind of two questions. So one goes to what you just said about I guess companies doing sustainability. If you think about companies like that use a lot of palm oil in their products, how do they kind of change and become sustainable when their kind of core business is kind of built on unsustainable practices?
Yes.
And then my second question is kind of tangential to the last one. Do you think that synthetic biology is changing how some companies are thinking about innovation?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of those things are important. That's where I talk about tech transfer. And tech transfer, let's say in universities that have a biomimetic or sustainable solution, at least where the R is done and it needs the D. That's where we can transfer. But I honestly think that our method of getting through the quicksand is the key to make these things work. Corporations, bless them, they're doing their core and they're doing it, but they're not going to spin their wheels on research. They really aren't, or even a proof of concept. They want somebody else to take that risk. And quite often the risk is privately funded. Get the fuel in the SUV, get over there, and then they'll buy into it, right? Yeah. Oh, was there another question? Okay. Yes.
First of all, thank you again for the presentation. We've talked a little bit about how biomimicry has been applied to products that have gone to market, but have you done any work in the way of enhancing organizational communication, something like that it's not necessarily a product, but more of an internal consulting? And if so, what did that look like?
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think if we've got any good examples of where we've taken inspiration from nature and kind of applied it to let's say more of an organizational slant. One of the things that comes to mind is if you think about the layout, if you're trying to create, I guess the first question is, what are you trying to achieve organizationally, right? The example that comes to mind for me is if you were trying to create this higher sense of collaboration within an organization, within a team, right? thinking about, are there ideas we can steal from nature, or like borrow from nature, that would improve the flow of people through a facility in a way that maximizes the number of productive collisions they have with each other, drives conversations, gets people, helping each, kind of talking about the problems they're trying to solve, solving each other's problems, and so on. I think that's why, like we use kind of like the beehive analogy when we talk about creating innovation space. Part of it is because we're trying to drive a certain degree of activity around it and a certain amount of, I always use the term like productive collisions, right? But it's like, in an innovation environment, in a corporate environment, I want to get people up from their desks. I want to get them talking to each other as much as possible, right? Because that's what sparks ideas. That's what sparks solutions to problems that people have, right? So I think of the beehive as kind of like an example of, it's really more almost about like how we approach the facility than about the organizational design itself and the people in it. But it drives a certain type of behavior that we see as beneficial, right? And you've even, I know where you took some of the inspiration. Yeah.
So talking about the beehive, before we did the hub, before we bought that historic building that you saw, we had the chance to go through Pixar Studios in San Francisco. And Pixar Studios was funded by Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs helped them design their beehive. And there's actually a book called Creativity, Inc. About this facility. What it is it's a vertically integrated facility to make animated pictures. And in that facility, they have the animators, the illustrators, the writers, everybody's vertically integrated there. And Steve Jobs talks about this. He put the cafeteria on one side, he put the restrooms on the other side. He put a big area to get together in the middle so that people would have those creative collisions during the day with all kinds of different subject matter experts as they were going. The production of that facility is one of the most productive facilities of any corporate structure in the United States. And we use that to plan when we found that building that had the center core and stacked floors, and everybody could be in our beehive. That's where we took it from.
It's 1 o'clock, I was going to say.
So do we have time for any more? I want to give one more example. One more biomimetics that I forgot to put in here.
Go for it.
But that's it. So how does nature purify water? Okay, you go into a stream or a lake. Do I take my bottle of chlorine and put it in there to make it pure? No, you don't. Why? Because nature, especially in a running stream or a waterfall, has something called nanobubbles. These are microscopic bubbles that plow through bacteria and kill the germs in the water and make it. That's why you can drink from a stream. So what we did is we created a nanobubble generator based on biomimicry to clean water. And we've applied that to jacuzzis that are coming out next year. Don't buy jacuzzi now. No, I'm serious. Wait till next year, because you're going to get a hot tub you don't have to add any chemicals to. Think about that. Based on biomimicry. That's the one I wanted to say. Okay, that's it. Okay.
All right, thank you, John and Brent. It was fabulous and interesting. Just a plug for our big event coming up in October, Bioscene. You will be apprised of it. It's all about bio-inspired materials. It'll be here. We're really excited about it. And if you want to reach out to Great Lakes Biomimicry, this is the contact information for Carol and me. And we are so glad to have spent this time with you and explored this topic. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.